India and Pakistan are on the brink of a wider conflict 2 weeks after a massacre on tourists in Indian-administered Kashmir, which killed 26 people. India has launched strikes on Pakistan and Pakistan-administered Kashmir. Now, India says it targeted terrorist infrastructure, and Pakistan claims 31 people have been killed, and Pakistan's Prime Minister has vowed to respond. Joining us is Professor Greg Barton, Deakin University Global Islamic Politics Chair. Professor Greg Barton, thank you for your time. Look, there's been conflict over Kashmir between India and Pakistan for a long time, but this appears to be a significant escalation in tensions between the two nuclear-armed countries. Can I get your reaction to the developments?
Yeah, it is very worrying, Gabriella. There have been three wars fought between India and Pakistan over Kashmir. I mean, both countries occupy parts of Kashmir. China occupies a northern section. Of course, India and Pakistan separated in 78, and that separation was never cleanly worked out in Kashmir. The last war fought in Kashmir was 1999, and over 1,000 people were killed. So that's fairly recent, and it shows how quickly things can escalate. Both sides are clearly not wanting to escalate, but of course, escalation often happens just because events get carried away and no one side controls what happens next.
Can you talk to us about why there's been so much unrest in Kashmir and the role that religion plays in this?
Yeah, Kashmir is divided between Hindu and Muslim population. Many of the Muslims live in the Pakistan-controlled Kashmir, but many Muslims live also in India-controlled Kashmir. And the federal government in New Delhi has imposed a kind of rule over Kashmir, which is not typical of most states, which is resented by Muslims living in Kashmir. They feel that they're sort of second-class citizens. There has been simmering tensions for a long time, but recently there was a terrible terrorist attack when gunmen opened fire on Hindu Indians who were in a mountain meadow. At least 25 people killed. They were deliberately targeted for being Hindus. India says that two of the gunmen were Pakistanis, suggesting they were linked to the Pakistani group Lashkar-e-Toiba or Lashkar-e-Muhammad, groups that have been linked to the Pakistani military. So, that's a really, those allegations are not proven, but that suggests that there's a lot of resentment, not just the fact that a terrorist group has done something, but possibly there's been state involvement or support or at least negligence in some way.
And now we've seen India respond with strikes, and Pakistan's Prime Minister has vowed to respond to the latest attacks. What are Pakistan's options?
Well, I think the first thing to understand is that India launched strikes that targeted civilian areas, but it says with some plausibility that these civilian areas where groups like Lashkar-e-Muhammad and Lashkar-e-Toiba had bases. The strikes were limited. I mean, terrible death toll, but still limited strikes. At the same time that Pakistan and India engaged in aerial combat, each 125 aircraft were literally involved. The aircraft for both countries stayed either side of their border. They didn't cross the border, so they fired missiles at each other from a long range. Pakistan says that 3 of the sophisticated French-made Rafale jets were shot down, and 2 other aircraft and a drone. Now, this is an important detail, apart from what it means in terms of understanding the military power of these nations and this equipment, because it means that Pakistan has an off-ramp. It can plausibly claim we've inflicted major damage on the Indians. They could launch a limited strike, perhaps, and there's reports of rocket strikes in Indian air bases, and then both sides could declare victory. That sounds like wishful thinking, but it's a very plausible way of de-escalating, because if Pakistan goes beyond this and says, no, we have to strike back harder, which is what the political rhetoric at the moment is saying, the danger is that they lose control of what happens next.
And that is the danger, that, there is so much concern that both sides are nuclear-armed countries. What's your sense of how this will play out?
I think it's reasonable to hope that they're going to de-escalate, because both sides have a very strong reason to want to do that. And both sides can plausibly claim that they've, a sort of victory where they've established a response. It's embarrassing for India to have lost these aircraft, if this is confirmed, but at least leaves Pakistan with an off-ramp. But, Gabriella, we're not living in ordinary times. We don't have the normal assurance that America will step in and use back-channel diplomacy through both countries that it has friendly relations with to de-escalate. That level of confidence is not there at the moment. We've got this terrible war between Russia and Ukraine, where Pakistan and India have taken different sides. There's a real sense of uncertainty in global affairs at the moment. So, had this occurred several years ago, we'd be very concerned. It's even more concerning that it's happening now in May of 2025 when the world is in such disarray.
Well, the US President, Donald Trump, has spoken about the conflict. Let's just take a listen to what he had to say.
India and Pakistan, what's your position?
Oh, it's so terrible. My position is I get along with both. I know both very well, and I want to see them work it out. I want to see them stop. And hopefully they can stop now. They've gone tit for tat, so hopefully they can stop now. But I know both. We get along with both the countries very well, good relationships with both, and I want to see it stop. And if I can do anything to help, I will be there.
US officials say that they've been in touch with both sides and they're urging the countries to work towards a responsible resolution. I suppose, are you surprised to see the US take more of a hands-off approach here?
Yeah, it's very disturbing, Gabriella. I mean, what President Trump said, of course, is good sentiment, but, the president gets a daily presidential brief. He'd said before that, those comments, that he just, heard this news coming into the Oval. It doesn't suggest a president in the mould of Ronald Reagan or George Bush fully in charge. Having said that, the response from the US administration officials, Pentagon officials, suggests that more work's been done behind the scenes, as you would expect. But this echoes this point that we are in uncertain times. That normal confidence we have in America making the right choices isn't there at the moment.
You say we're in uncertain times. Is it likely that other terrorist groups could see this as an opportune time to strike?
Absolutely. We've got a terrible situation in Afghanistan where Al-Qaeda and Islamic State both have very strong presence. The troubles in Pakistan, which this could escalate, lead to a porous border. Of course, we've got the tragedy of the Middle East, Islamic State surging across eastern North Africa. There's lots of reasons for somebody to feel that now is the time, if they're drawn to these extremist groups, are involved in their networks, to feel that now's the time to launch a strike. This is a moment of opportunity.
And I just have to ask, I suppose you are confident, though, that we are going to see tensions de-escalate?
No, I'm not confident. I'm hopeful, and I lean towards being more optimistic than not. But we could see a regional war, as we saw at least a very limited war, as in 1999, still 1,000 lives lost. But we could see something spiral downwards from that and become very much worse very quickly.
Professor Greg Barton, Deakin University Global Islamic Politics Chair. Really appreciate you making the time to speak to us here on Power Hour. Thank you.
Thank you very much.